In the middle of the American Midwest, tucked away among fields and frozen farmland, there was once a house that people dared to enter. From the outside, it looked like any other farmhouse. Paint peeling, fences broken, and land left to rot. But inside, behind most boarded up windows and locked doors, there was something beyond imagination. What investigators found in that house in 1957 shocked the world. Furniture upholstered in human skin, masks made from faces of the dead, bones repurposed into tools, bowls and ornaments, and at the centre of it all, a man, so quiet, so unassuming, that neighbours described him as harmless, even helpful. But behind his pale stare and timid smile, Ed Gein was hiding a secret life of grave robbing, murder, and an unspeakable obsession. He wasn't just a killer, he was a collector, an inventor of horrors, and a man whose crimes blurred the line between nightmare and reality. This is the true story of Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield, a man whose legacy will go on to inspire some of the most terrifying villains in horror film history. Welcome back to Nightmare Situations. Tonight, we're not just telling you a story, we're opening the door to a nightmare that you can never unsee. If you enjoy it tonight, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe, as it really helps the channel. Now, let's get into it. Ed Gein was born August 27th, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin. His father, George, was a violent alcoholic who struggled to keep down a job. His mother, Augusta, was deeply religious, a domineering woman who controlled every detail of the household. She drilled into Ed and his older brother Henry that women were instruments of sin and corruption, that sexuality was evil, and that the world outside of their own home was wicked. In 1915, the family moved to an isolated 155-acre farm just outside of Plainfield. The farm was remote, deliberately chosen to cut the family off from the outside influence. Ed was quiet, shy, and often bullied at school. He had a strange laugh, odd mannerisms, and poor social skills. While his classmates bonded, Ed withdrew into himself, often reading books on autonomy, adventure stories, and pulp magazines. He adored his mother and idolised her strict religious authority, seeing her as the one figure of stability in his life. She, in turn, reinforced his dependence, forbidding friendships and punishing any form of curiosity. The boy who loved his mother and would one day go to unimaginable lengths to bring her back. In 1944, Ed and his older brother Henry were burning brush on their property when the fire started to spread. Henry was later found dead, face down with bruises on his head. Though ruled accidental, many suspected Ed had something to do with it. This is due to Henry openly criticising Augusta, and many believe that perhaps Ed couldn't tolerate it anymore. The following year, after suffering many strokes, Augusta died. For Ed, this was devastating, as the entire world, his only true connection, was gone. After her death, Ed preserved her living space exactly as they were. The parlour, the kitchen, and her bedroom were sealed off like shrines, untouched by dust or time. The rest of the farmhouse, however, decayed into filth, piles of rubbish, newspapers, and a suffocating stench. Alone, Ed's loneliness deepened into obsession. He began fantasizing about ways to resurrect or embody his mother. He believed he could transform himself into her, even if it meant stitching together the pieces of others. And so, Ed Gein began his descent into the graveyards of Plainfield. Ed began reading obituaries carefully, looking for women who reminded him of Augusta. Soon after burials, he would arrive and dig them up. From these graves, he stole bodies, skin, and organs. Investigators later revealed that Ed confessed to making up to 40 nocturnal trips to cemeteries, though he claimed he often left empty-handed when he came to his senses. The trophies he brought home, however, paint a much clearer picture. His farmhouse was a workshop. Chairs upholstered with human skin, skulls carved out and used as bowls, masks made from women's faces hanging like grotesque decorations. There was belts constructed from human nipples, and the most infamous, a full-body woman suit crafted from stitched up human skin. Ed explained he would wear the suit in order to become his mother, climbing into her skin, so to speak. In the quiet, frozen fields of Wisconsin, Ed Gein lived inside a nightmare of his own design, one stitched together, piece by piece, from the dead. While investigators believe that grave robbing accounted for most of his gruesome collection, Ed did not stop with the dead. On December 8, 1954, tavern owner Mary Hogan disappeared. Her tavern was left empty, with blood on the floor. Some locals joked when Ed mentioned her being at the farm. They thought it was strange, but harmless. Then, on November 16, 1957, Bernice Warden vanished from her hardware store. The cash register was gone, blood was on the floor, and her son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden, recalled that Ed Gein had been in the store the night before. Police searched Gein's farm, and what they found there would become one of the most infamous crime scenes in history. Inside the shed, Bernice Warden's body hung upside down, decapitated and gutted like a deer. In the house, officers found horrors of Gein's workshop. Faces turned into masks, organs preserved in jars, bowls made from skulls, and furniture stitched together from human flesh. Even the most hardened of investigators described the scene as something from a nightmare. Some officers vomited, others couldn't enter the property at all. They called it the House of Horrors, and for once, the phrase wasn't enough. Ed confessed to the murders of Mary Hogan and Bernice Warden, insisting that the rest of his trophies came from the graves. He was quickly declared legally insane and committed to Central State Hospital. In 1968, he was tried and found guilty of the murder of Bernice Warden, but once again ruled insane. He spent the remainder of his life in psychiatric institutions until he died from cancer in 1984 at the age of 77. Unlike most killers, Ed wasn't executed or imprisoned in the traditional sense. Instead, he became a permanent patient, a man locked away not just physically, but mentally. The Plainfield community was scarred. For decades, people would avoid using the town's name, ashamed of the association. But Ed Gein's crimes spread far beyond Wisconsin. His story inspired some of the most iconic horror villains. Norman Bates in Psycho, the quiet, mother-obsessed motel owner. Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, wearing masks of human skin. And Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, stitching together a skin suit. Ed Gein became the blueprint for horror's most enduring monsters. Not because his crimes were exaggerated, but because they were real. Fiction didn't need to make Ed Gein worse. Reality had already gone far enough. Ed Gein was not the most prolific killer. He was not the most violent, but the sheer, grotesque nature of his crimes etched him into history as something darker. A man who blurred the line between death and life, between memory and obsession. He turned grief into horror, loneliness into cruelty, and left behind a legacy that will haunt both true crime and fiction forever. You've been watching Nightmare Situations. If you enjoyed the episode tonight, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And remember, sometimes reality is more terrifying than any nightmare. Thank you for watching.